When Calls the Heart, Season 8, Episode 6. The show opened up with Bill telling Clara, I noticed Jesse isn't here this morning. Again. She said, I appreciate your attentiveness, but I told you I don't want to talk about it. Bill said, fair enough. She starts to walk away, and then she stopped and turned around. I mean, what kind of husband goes behind his wife's back and withdraws their whole life savings and risks it on some kind of foolish investment and doesn't tell her about it until she confronts him? Bill was standing there looking like a deer in headlights and said, food's getting cold. Clara said, right, grabbed it and said sorry. Jesse was in Lee's office telling him that Clara asked him to leave. Lee said, oh no, Jesse, I'm sorry. Jesse said, I broke my wife's trust for the second time. I'm guessing he's talking about the first time when he bought that motorcycle without telling her. I don't know what I was thinking about. Lee had to go. He said, don't worry, we'll figure this out. Why don't you go to the saloon and get a room? Tell Lucas to put it on my tab. Lee rushed out of the door telling Jesse he'll be right back. He bumped into a young man who had just parked his car and got out of it. Rachel was in the dress shop window looking across the street, and she saw when Lee and the young man bumped into each other. They apologized to each other, and the young man smiled and looked down at the watch that he had just stolen from Lee. He put the watch in his pocket. Then he looked over and saw Henry, and he started hiding his face, looking down. He was standing in front of Rachel as he was hiding, and when Henry passed by, he looked up and saw Rachel looking at him. He took his hat off and walked away. Rachel was smiling at him and watched him as he walked down the street. Elizabeth looked as if she was finishing up her manuscript. Someone knocked on the door and she said, come in, twice. When no one came in, she went to the door to see who it was. She didn't see anyone, but she saw a note sitting into the crack of the door. It was from Lucas asking her to meet him at sunset at the pond. Lee went home and told Rosemary that he was the one that inquired to Dolly about buying the dress shop. Rosemary looked at him seriously with a knife in her hand because she was cutting carrots. She asked him, why would you do that? Lee said, to surprise you. She said, well, you certainly managed to do that, and went back to cutting the carrots. He said, not in a good way, I see. Are you making dinner already? And he reached in his pocket to look at his watch, but it was missing. He said, where's my watch? But before he could get the word watch out, Rosemary said, Lee, unless you have something else you forgot to tell me, or something funny with quotations, that's the way she looked, like she was holding up quotation marks, then go back to work. He said, yes, dear, and walked out the door. Coop was pushing Angela on the swing that their father built for them. Minnie walked by and she said, Coop, don't push her too high. But Angela told him to push her higher. He reluctantly did what she said, and she fell out the swing. They took her to see Carson, and Carson said she didn't have any broken bones. Elizabeth went to Ned's to mail her manuscript to Helen. While she was there, Nathan and Allie came in looking for mosquito repellent because they were on their way to go fishing. Ned didn't have any mosquito repellent, but he said he had an order he was expecting tomorrow and asked that Nathan come back. Check back tomorrow. Allie said, okay, bye, Mrs. Thornton. Nathan and Elizabeth looked at each other awkwardly before he walked out the door. When they got outside the door, Allie asked Nathan if he liked Mrs. Thornton. He said, why can you ask me about Mrs. Thornton and I can't ask you about Robert? Then they began to race. They are racing to whatever they're going to do in the place of fishing. The young stranger walked into the saloon and sat at the same table with Henry. Henry didn't seem happy to see him. Lee and Rosemary passed by Henry and the stranger, and they looked like they were expecting Henry to introduce them. Henry said, "This is Christopher. We have business together." Henry really acted like he didn't want the young guy there with him. He asked him to go ahead and leave in the morning. Elizabeth was on her way to meet Lucas at the pond, and she ran up on Nathan teaching Allie how to ride the horse. Allie invited Elizabeth to go riding with them. Elizabeth said, "Maybe after your uncle has given you a few more lessons." I've noticed Elizabeth and Nathan, they don't really talk anymore. They just say hi and bye, and they look at each other awkwardly. Allie does most of the talking. She does all of the talking. As Nathan and Allie were riding home, she asked him again, did he like Miss Thornton? Nathan said, "I don't know what you mean." She said, "Remember when I used to like Robert?" Nathan said, "Wait a minute. Used to? That's over between you two?" She said, "Robert has decided that he likes Anna." She acted like she was still hurt about it. So Nathan said, "You don't have to explain." Elizabeth showed up at the pond and Lucas had a picnic ready. Once they finished eating, Elizabeth did a toast. She said, "To us." It started raining cats and dogs, so they ran to the car. When they were in the car, because of the limited space, they were really close and they were looking at each other. And Elizabeth was looking at his lips, and when he tried to kiss her, she pulled away and said, "I can't. Not yet. Sorry." They both looked at the picnic getting drenched in the rain and started laughing. The next morning, Elizabeth was excited to pick up a package from Ned. Nathan and Allie came in to pick up the mosquito repellent. Ned told Nathan he could pay for it later because he knows he and Allie are in a hurry. After thanking Ned, Nathan looked at Elizabeth and said, "Nice to see you again." She said, "Nice to see you too." And Nathan walked out. But Allie hung around for a few seconds, looking and smiling at Elizabeth. Then she said, "Bye, Miss Thornton." Elizabeth said, "Bye, Allie," smiling and looking suspicious at her. The young stranger, Christopher, visited Henry at the mine. He asked Henry how long he owned this place. Henry said, "I don't own this." He said, "What you do, lose it by mismanagement?" Henry said, "Something like that." Christopher says, "So what does it feel like losing something that you poured so much blood and sweat into creating?" Henry said, "Not good. And I'm trying to learn from my mistakes." Christopher says, "So what have you learned?" Henry said, "I've learned that life is devastatingly short." Henry said, "I've learned that life is devastatingly short and fragile. And I'll never have enough time here to mend or fix all the things that I've broken." He said, "I know you came here to say goodbye." And he reached his hand out to shake Christopher's hand. And Christopher just looked at his hand and then walked away and got in the car. Carson got another letter from Dr. Rizzoli. He had turned down the offer to go work with him in New York. And now the doctor wasn't taking no for an answer. Faith told him that he should go ahead and accept the fellowship because she didn't want him to resent her for not accepting it. Christopher parked his car in the woods, grabbed his suitcase, and started walking. Elizabeth ordered a Braille book for Angela. She and Minnie are going to learn how to read Braille so they can teach Angela. Rachel was washing the dress shop window and she saw Christopher walk up. She said, "Where's your car?" He said that belonged to someone else. They introduced each other and shook hands. Nathan and Carson was standing across the street. Carson was looking at Faith and Maggie talking. He asked Nathan, "Why do we stop trying new things?" Elizabeth and Lucas met up in the street and Nathan was looking at her. And he said, "I don't know. We probably give up when things don't go our way the first time." Carson said, "Staying where we're comfortable." Nathan said, "Staying with someone you're comfortable with." Carson said, there are plenty of new experiences to be enjoyed. Nathan said, more meaningful relationships. Carson said, she needs to trust me. Nathan said, she's got to know me. Carson said, be willing to try. Nathan said, it's as simple as that. Carson said, easy as pie. And at the same time, they said, I'm not giving up. They looked at each other, smiled, and walked away. They all walked away. Faith and Maggie, Elizabeth and Lucas, Nathan and Carson. Florence brought Ned a beekeeper's outfit for his birthday. He said, how did you know I had an interest in beekeeping? She said, because I have an interest in all things Ned. Henry drove up and saw Christopher and said, I thought you were leaving. Christopher said he got to the edge of town and he decided he wanted to stay, if that's okay with Henry. Henry said, that's a start, and they shook hands. Elizabeth walked up and Henry said, this is my son Christopher. Elizabeth looked shocked. Ned was trying on the beekeeper's outfit and he was standing on the porch. He was calling Florence's name. She looked at him and smiled. Everybody on the street that heard him looked at him. Mike, Florence, Christopher, Henry, Elizabeth, Carson. He started complaining about being hot and not feeling too well. He held on the rails and then fell down the steps. Everyone ran to him. Carson took the helmet off his head and he was unconscious, and the show went off. I hope Ned is okay, but I'm thinking that this may be the opportunity to let Carson know that he's needed in the town. He may have to do some kind of surgery, tough surgery on Ned, and this is going to show him and Faith that he needs to stay where he is. As soon as I saw Christopher hiding from Henry, I had a feeling that he was his son. Wind Calls the Heart, Season 8, Episode 6, March 28, 2021. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.